Good morning, Endeavour, and a very happy Friday to you. We have done it. Let's cross fingers that today isn't as rainy as yesterday. I literally thought we were going to have to buy a boat. Now, we rejoin our class novel, The Fire Thief, on chapter 9, where Prometheus has agreed to help out our dodgy pair of Jim and Uncle Edward. This can only turn bad. It's called The Storm in Eden City. Later. A writer needs to learn a bit about pace, so let's jump forward a few minutes. You don't want to hear about what happened after January storm smashed my head with a sawdust bucket, how I tried to tear her ginger hair out by the roots and was pulled off by Uncle Edward and Theseus. You don't want to know how we climbed up the dark stairs to our room. Just let's get there, shall we? I sat on the bed and played Race the Cockroach while Uncle Edward helped Theseus to dress in Big Bill's clothes. From time to time I rubbed my sore ear and cursed the ugly girl downstairs. Big Bill must have been a sharp dresser. The black suit was almost clean, the shirt was almost white, and Uncle Edward fastened on one of his own starched collars. The waistcoat was decorated with silver threads, and there was a black hat that made Theseus look like a gambler. As Theseus stuffed his arms into the sleeves, a couple of playing cards fell to the floor. They were the Ace of Clubs and the Ace of Hearts. How did they get there? Theseus asked. Uncle Edward spread his hands. Big Bill was a card cheat. I think he cheated some fellows out of rather a lot of money last night. They were waiting for him in the alley behind the Storm Inn. They planned to give him a beating and get their money back. A beating? Theseus asked as he tried to scrape spots of blood from the front of the shirt. He died, the foolish man, Uncle Edward said. It served him right. Served him right? For cheating at cards? Theseus asked. No, served him right for having such a thin skull. Never be a card cheat if you've got a thin skull, Uncle Edward said, and he wagged a fat finger in the young man's face. Theseus frowned. I'll remember that, Mr. Slaughter. He straightened his clothes in the mirror. He looked as if he'd never worn trousers or a jacket before. I'm right, you know that he'd never worn trousers before. You've seen the pictures of Greek gods floating around in creamy, dreamy robes, but I didn't know then what I know now, that Prometheus wasn't just any old Prometheus. He was the Prometheus. What do you want me to do for you, Mr. Slaughter? Prometheus asked. He looked in the mirror and played with his thin necktie. Uncle Edward looked sly. I knew he wanted to tell Theseus too much. After all, if he said, we're off to go and rob a house of all its silver and gold, then Theseus might have wanted a share. Or Theseus might have been a police spy. Instead, Uncle Edward only told the half-truth. He waved a hand at me. Little Jim and I, we are actors. We perform anywhere that there's an audience. I am but a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard of no more. That was a silly thing to do. Of all the Shakespeare plays wrote, there is no one that is cursed. You should never recite lines from that play when you're in a theatre, or bad luck will strike you. Now the Storm Inn wasn't exactly a theatre, but it was where we would do our show later that night. The strut and fret lines are from a play. I'm too afraid to name it, or it would curse this book. We actors call it the Scottish play. Did we have bad luck that night after Uncle Edward spouted those lines? What do you think? You want me to strut and fret? Theseus asked, looking worried. How do I do that? That's just sayings. You know Shakespeare, Uncle Edward said. You want me to shake a spear? Shakespeare was a writer, dead many years ago, alas. Did he have a thin skull too? Theseus wondered. Shakespeare, great writer. Why did the writer shake a spear? Theseus asked. No, Uncle Edward was getting irritated. I see you've never been to school. Theseus looked afraid. No, but I've heard about them, cruel places, where children are made to look like fools, where they're called names like dunce and duffer and clot and clodball and blockhead and nitwit and numbskull and fool and fathead. Uncle Edward had been sitting on the bed. He rose to his feet and rested a hand on Theseus' shoulder. He looked him in the eye, though he wasn't tall enough, so he looked him in the top button of his shirt. Theseus, my boy, all I want you to do is help us carry a box. A box? I can carry a box. Good. Little Jim and I usually struggle to carry it to our own shows. Little Jim's a weedy child, barely strong enough to tie his own shoelaces. I'm not, I cried. Jim is so weak he couldn't pull a greasy stick out of an elephant's trunk. I could, I argued. You could? I could. That's good. That's good. Why is that good? Because, Uncle Edward said with a glimmer in his eye, you can carry one end of the coffin and Theseus can carry the other. What will you be carrying? I asked. I, dear Jim, will be carrying the worries of the world on my broad shoulders, and I will carry the magic lantern, he explained. I sniffed. I'd been tricked and cheated again. What is this coffin? Theus asked again. Ah, Uncle Edward said, it's not a real coffin, it's a piece of stage furniture. We actors call it a prop. We need it when we do the famous poem called The Uncle. You'll see it tonight at the Mucklethrift Manor show, he promised. Then when the show's finished, you can carry it back here and hide it. Hide it? Why? Asked Theus with a puzzled frown. Because people don't like to see coffins lying around. It reminds them of their dead friends and loved ones. A coffin upsets people, so get it back here fast as you can and hide it under the stage. Theus snapped his fingers, and another playing card fell out of his sleeve, the ace of hearts. I can bring it back and leave it on the top of the stage, he said, and looked pleased with himself. Uncle Edward's eyes narrowed. Why would you want to do that, my boy? Because you're doing a show at 11 for the people in the Storm Inn, he said. You'll need the box for that show. No, Uncle Edward said sharply. For that show we do a different story. We will do the story, The Boy Stood on the Burning Deck. Why did he stand on the burning deck? Theus asked. Because, my boy, he was a hero. You'll see. Uncle Edward began to tell the story of the boy who stood on the burning deck, but Theus wasn't listening. Theus had a dreamy look in his eye and was murmuring to himself, a hero. Yes, that's what I want to find, a hero. Then I can go home. But Theus was a long way from home, and a short way from a very tight noose. Oh, Endeavour, this is not going to be good. I will see you all on Monday for Chapter 10, Greece, the day after the dawn of time. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye.